They are accusing Democrats of saying we spend too much. For anyone that wants to entertain that thought, I ask you to think about the last time a person has said in this country that the government does too much for them, that their Social Security check was too high, that teachers are paid too much. When was the last time anyone has heard or seen that?
When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took the floor, her words carried the rhythm of protest and the conviction of faith. She painted a portrait of a struggling America, teachers underpaid, elders forgotten, and corporations unchallenged. Her delivery was electric, her message moral. But beneath the applause, something stirred, a question of substance over sentiment. Was this empathy or performance? In the chamber's silence, one could almost hear the tension between moral urgency and fiscal reality tightening like a drum, and just as her final line echoed, "When was the last time anyone said the government does too much?" A different voice rose from the other side of the aisle, colder, sharper, and ready to strike.
Another quote. President Biden already lowered the deficit by $1.7 trillion. They say his budget would cut the deficit by another $3 trillion by eliminating wasteful spending on big oil and pharma, we're told. But it is in fact our Democratic colleagues who prefer to maintain their massive subsidies for the elites and the wealthy in their so-called Inflation Reduction Act just last year. My friend from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, said, quote, "I ask you, think about the last time a person has said in this country that the government does too much for them. When was the last time anyone has heard or seen that?" I'll say it. I'll say it right here. I don't want the government doing most of the things that the government is doing to interfere with the ability of the American people to carry out their lives. Federal, state, and local.
Chip Roy didn't shout. He didn't sneer. He simply stood, calm, composed, and armed with facts. Where AOC wielded emotion, Roy brandished logic. He reminded the chamber that deficit reduction, taxation, and bureaucracy weren't just numbers on paper. They were burdens on every working American. He spoke not as a showman but as a skeptic of power itself. Roy's voice cut through the chamber like a blade of cold steel, asking not how much government gives, but how much it takes. In that moment, the debate shifted. It was no longer about compassion versus greed. It was about freedom versus control. And as his words gathered force, the entire mood of the floor began to turn.
When was the last time you had a bureaucrat show up and you said, "Oh joy, thank you. I'm really glad there's a bureaucrat here"? When was the last time you were thankful for $32 trillion in debt, $100,000 almost for every man, woman, and child in America? Anybody thankful for $32 trillion in debt? Anybody? Anybody thankful for a border that's wide open being exploited by cartels while fentanyl comes in?
Roy leaned in with the numbers no one wanted to hear. $32 trillion in debt, $100,000 owed for every man, woman, and child. He didn't hide behind slogans. He asked the unthinkable, who's thankful for that? It was a moment that forced silence. The air grew heavy with the weight of arithmetic truth, a truth that no applause could erase. Behind every social promise, he warned, lies a bill someone must pay. And as the cameras rolled that single question, who's thankful for $32 trillion in debt, became more than rhetoric. It was a mirror held to a nation intoxicated by spending, but terrified of sacrifice.
Kills our children? Everybody thankful for that Department of Homeland Security that doesn't actually secure the homeland? Everybody thankful for an FBI that went after Scott Smith and labeled him a domestic terrorist for daring to defend his daughter in a school board meeting because she was assaulted in a bathroom? Anybody thankful for the IRS knocking on your door, auditing the poor and the minorities 3 to 5 times more? People thankful for that? Are you thankful for the EPA or the Department of Interior that sent a man to prison because he had some ponds on his ranch in Montana?
Roy painted an unflattering portrait of government not as protector, but as intruder. Bureaucrats at doors, audits on the poor, farmers criminalized for ponds. To him, every layer of government became another chain on the American spirit. The irony was piercing. A nation founded on liberty, now smothered by paperwork. He framed it as moral decay, the quiet acceptance of control disguised as compassion. His tone wasn't anger, it was disappointment, the kind that comes from watching a republic trade its independence for convenience. And as his voice rose, one couldn't help but sense the subtext. This wasn't just about policy. It was about the soul of self-governance itself.
We have a government that is weaponized against the American people and is undermining our liberties, and they want more of it. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle want more government. They want more taxes. They want more spending. They want more bureaucrats knocking on your door.
I'll tell you, I've been to the border. I've been to the Biden cages. For 4 years, Democrats went on and on and on. The corrupt corporate media went on and on and on about kids in cages. You couldn't turn on the evening news without hearing kids in cages. What they didn't tell you is Barack Obama built those cages, and today under Joe Biden, the cages are bigger and they're more full than they were before. Mr. President, every Democrat who stood up and lamented kids in cages in the House of Representatives.
Then came the pivot that electrified the room. Roy shifted from economics to the border, the issue politicians fear most. He accused Democrats of moral theater, condemning kids in cages under Trump while ignoring the same cages under Biden. The phrase Biden cages hit like an explosion. It wasn't just a jab. It was a charge of hypocrisy. He described scenes of overcrowded tents, disease, and despair, not abstract statistics, but faces of children. The moral high ground, he suggested, had collapsed under its own contradictions. As the chamber murmured, it was clear. This was no longer a budget debate. It was a reckoning about honesty and leadership.
Representative Ocasio-Cortez has a famous photo of her grasping her head by the kids in cages. Well, I'm going to give a simple challenge for Representative Ocasio-Cortez and for every Democrat in this body. Go see the Biden cages with your own eyes. I've seen them, the Donna tent facility with over 4,000 people, with little boys and little girls on top of each other. Just a couple of weeks ago when I was in the Rio Grande Valley, the rate of COVID positivity in the Biden cages was over 22%. And all the Democrats who talked about this, if they don't go, if they don't denounce the Biden cages, then they're telling you that they're hypocrites, that they didn't believe it when they said it, that they didn't care about it when they said it, that it was all politics. It wasn't about their kids.
Roy's fire turned toward the media, the so-called guardians of democracy. He accused them of selective blindness, of trading journalism for access. 15,000 Haitians under a bridge. Nothing to see here, he mocked. The line hit like thunder. His accusation was simple but devastating. The press had become a public relations arm for power. Instead of exposing suffering, they were chasing ice cream flavors. Beneath the rhetoric was a larger fear, that America was losing not just its borders, but its ability to tell itself the truth. The cameras that once held leaders accountable now turned away. And that silence, Roy implied, was the loudest betrayal of all.
Why does Joe Biden refuse to go to the Rio Grande Valley? Because if he goes, the TV cameras will come with him. Why does Kamala Harris, who's supposed to be the border czar, she's supposed to be in charge of this, why won't she go to the Rio Grande Valley? Because if she went, the TV cameras would come and would show the Biden cages. And the Democrats are counting on the corrupt corporate media to suddenly say, nothing to see here. 15,000 Haitians under a bridge in Del Rio, nothing to see here. Anyone want to know what Joe Biden's favorite ice cream flavor is? That's the news. Never mind 1.2 million illegal immigrants. Never mind when I took 19 senators down to the border, we went out on the river and saw a man floating dead in the river who died.
His tone shifted, less fury, more grief. Roy recounted the grim sight of a lifeless man floating in the Rio Grande. It wasn't political theater, it was human consequence. He told of parents arming their children against traffickers, of families finding bodies on their own land. The emotion cracked through his composure. This was not policy failure, it was moral collapse. The debate over borders suddenly felt smaller than the reality he described. Every dead body, every abandoned child, every exploited woman became an indictment, not of one administration, but of the nation's conscience itself.
Cross illegally. Never mind the South Texas farmers and ranchers, the moms who told me, I won't let my teenage kids go out on our ranch without being armed with a loaded firearm. Because there's so many human traffickers and narcotics traffickers that it's dangerous for them to go out on their own ranch. Never mind the South Texas farmers and ranchers who told me at round tables how tired they are of going out and finding dead bodies. You want to understand what's happening? Say there's no crisis? Come to Brooks County. I invite every Democrat here to Brooks County. Brooks County in South Texas, it's just north of the border. Brooks County, over and over and over again, they're dead bodies of illegal immigrants. The traffickers who are bringing them in, they're not nice guys. They're not humanitarians. They don't give a damn. That means if one of the illegal immigrants is a pregnant woman, is a young child, is elderly, is sick, they just abandon them. They leave them in the rough terrain.
Roy's voice grew somber as he described the cartel's brutality. Pregnant women, children, the elderly left to die in the desert. The traffickers, he said, were not liberators but merchants of misery. And the policies enabling them? Complicit in their crimes. His words carried the weight of witness testimony. The desert was no longer geography, it was judgment. He asked the question no one could comfortably answer. Is this humane? In that instant, the chamber was stripped of ideology. It became a courtroom of conscience. And as the echo of his question lingered, even silence seemed to confess.
Rain in the summer heat and over again. The farmers and ranchers encounter dead bodies on their property where the traffickers have abandoned them. Mr. President, I ask you, is that humane? Is that compassionate, the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris policy that encourages, that puts people in harm's way and results in people dying? When we were down on the border, we saw a young girl who had been gang raped by the human traffickers who had brought her to America. The rate of sexual assault is staggering, particularly among the girls.
By the end, Roy's argument transcended politics. It became a plea, not for votes, but for truth. Is this compassion? He asked, voice trembling between outrage and sorrow. It was the question of a man staring at a nation he no longer recognized. AOC had spoken of generosity. Roy spoke of accountability. One vision offered help through government, the other through freedom. And between them lay the fault line of America itself. The debate ended, but the divide it revealed only grew deeper.